Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to each one of you. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking out time and being here with us. Now, without further ado, let's just get started with the session. So presently, as Gaurav pointed out, every other enterprise CXO is talking about artificial intelligence and making it their top priority for 2022. In fact, AI is getting so deeply engraved into businesses that today its potential is harnessed in providing exceptional customer service. It is enabling employees to create an immersive environment to work virtually. It is empowering enterprises to meet their net zero goals, and the list goes on. In fact, it is very right to presume that going forward, implementing an AI first strategy is going to be the green card to market leadership today and as well as for the future. So, holding on to this thought, let us look at the most talked about technology. I'll briefly touch upon the agenda and the points that we'll be covering as part of this presentation. We start off with the AI market landscape and the top revenue generating areas. Then we look at how different ecosystem players from the demand as well as the supply side are coming together to advance AI maturity. From this adoption, we'll also look at what are the top technology trends that are coming out of it and that will mature further in the next 12 months. Getting an overview on the enterprise, we also have a very interesting angle on benchmarking of industries from both demand and the supply lens, and we'll look at the top 4 industries that are dominating AI space with a very detailed view on financial services sector. And then at last, we'll conclude the presentation with the 6 bets that we believe will eminently impact the future of AI. Speaking of the huge market opportunity that AI entails, this technology has been gaining a lot of attention, especially post COVID-19. And this momentum is showcased by a huge market size in 2021, which amounted to around 60 billion. And it is poised to grow to a 127 billion market by 2024. Regionally speaking, we see that North America has been dominating this market, capturing around 47% of the market. However, the next potential region that we believe would be APAC because it has already captured 23%, implying that the AI maturity is also shifting regionally. This technology has been unlocking significant business value from horizontal operations. And hence, we are seeing use cases in horizontal operations such as customer service, cognitive security, sales and marketing, process automation, and research and development as the top 5 revenue generating area. For the next 2 to 3 years, the main driver that will propel the growth of this market would be inculcating AI to minimize unprecedented supply chain risks. And hence, this would be the top use case in the next 2 to 3 years. We have also analyzed this market from solution components. So we see that the software market has captured around 74% and it will be growing at a CAGR of 30% in the next 3 years. Now, basis our global survey, we found that 70% of these enterprises prefer customized models trained on their company data for the deployment. But a very interesting trend that came out was most of these enterprises are also moving towards your pre-trained or the pre-built models for faster deployment of these algorithms. As we see a similar trend in the other 2 sectors. So for the AI hardware market, which is capturing around 20%, the main driver was the enterprise adoption of Edge AI. And for the services market, it captured around 6% of the market. Now, moving on, at the right side, we see we look at the enterprise AI spending and the future growth in AI investments by industries. So at a Uber level, over 45% of the enterprises are spending more than $0.5 million annually. And we have noticed, especially post-COVID, we have noticed an upsurge in AI investments. The top 2 industries that came out up top were the BFSI and the healthcare. And we'll see these industries dominating AI investments in the future as well. So although the AI adoption has increased, the maturity or the implementation maturity differs. So over 35% of the enterprises have either launched a proof of concept or they have a minimal viable product at place. But But whereas we see a whopping 46% who have integrated AI into at least one business functions. After this, we have also looked at the sub-technologies that they have recently adopted, and we see that emotional AI and computer vision. So these are the two sub-technologies that have been gaining significant traction over the years, and over 90% of the total enterprises have been considering these to be highest importance and which they believe would unlock enormous value in the future as well. Another trend that I pointed out was that 40% of the enterprises are preferring pre-built use case specific models to deploy these algorithms in a very faster way. We also have looked at the key business outcomes that is being chased by AI adoption. So here, if we look at the chart, the top three areas where it has unlocked significant value is enhancing process efficiency, personalizing in your customer experience, and it has also led to FTE time savings. So these are the top three business outcomes. But one interesting thing over here is that AI is also venturing into niche and newer areas. So we see that almost 60% of the enterprises have at least adopted AI to drive their sustainability initiatives. Moving on, so this was so we saw the entire market landscape. We are looking at the enterprise maturity. So one way of gauging this maturity was also to look at the different business function from two angles. So one is your enterprise adoption, and second is the scale of value realization. So at a glance, we see that enterprises are exploring immediate opportunity by leveraging AI in IT management and customer service. However, the nature of application in these areas are changing. So for example, AI in customer service is no more just limited to deployment of chatbots, but they are leveraging NLP for customer sentiment analysis to dynamically route calls and assist employees with the next best actions. So for instance, just taking a case in point over here, Toyota has integrated Google's AI interactive voice assistant that leverages NLP to dynamically answer drivers' queries in real time. Now, speaking of the near-term opportunities, we believe that this technology will generate remarkable value in research and development and supply chain management to predict future risks. Moving on, so this was an overall view on how the adoption is looking like. And now we are looking at the trends that are coming out of this adoption. So we filtered out top technology trends that we believe is bound to disrupt the market in the near future. We have bifurcated this maturity in terms of the enterprise adoption. What stage are the enterprises are in terms of their implementation? So first phase is your fully deployed and your in production phase. The second one is the POC or the experimental phase. And the third comprises of the number of enterprises that are yet to adopt the trend. So just looking at this chart, right? So process automation is the trend which is highly matured in terms of AI adoption. We are seeing many enterprises deploying RPA for intelligent document processing. So for instance, Bridgestone, it had partnered with IUPATH to automate document workflows in sales and production processes, and it has thereby saved the operational time of their employees by more than 90%. This is the current matured area, but when we look at the next, say, 12 to 24 months, we believe that there are two trends that will highly accelerate in this time frame. So one is your cognitive security. So we are already known with the rising number of cyber attacks, especially due to remote workforce, due to the increase in remote workforce. So AI has been implemented. So already there are 22% of the enterprises who have already implemented AI in cybersecurity, and over 50% of them have deployed a proof of concept in this area. We see a similar trend in improving accuracy of speech and language models, where we'll see large language models being trained on n number of data sets, and they will also include native languages in machine translation. Talking about the opportunity in the next 2 to 3 years, we believe responsible AI ops, that is basically integrating AI in your IT operations, and edge AI. These would be the one that would accelerate in the next 24 to 36 months. So this was all about how Uber level of enterprise adoption. Now we are looking at an industry level. So we did a pretty interesting exercise where we are looking at a particular industry from two angles. One is your demand side, where we are looking at the enterprise adoption. We are looking at the CXO sentiments, the market growth, the future investments. And then the second is the supply lens, where we are looking at technology providers, product portfolio, partner penetrations, investments across both the hyperscalers and the startup ecosystem. So based on our analysis, these were, as Gaurav also pointed out, these were the top four, or we could say the innovators in AI domain. So that was the retail, e-commerce, automotive, BFSI, and healthcare. To understand how these verticals are innovating, so we deep dived into one of the innovators, that is the BFSI. So the next couple of slides will focus on what are the trends, how the landscape looks like, what are the trends, and what are the use cases that are coming up in the financial sector. All right. So this gives an overall landscape view by looking at different metrics that depicts the current adoption and growth in the financial services sector. So we forecasted a growth of 32% till 2024. When we look at the current adoption, or around 75% of the BFSI enterprises have extensively deployed AI across multiple business functions. Over 50% of these enterprises are also investing more than 0.5 million annually in AI. Then we have a couple of metrics over the startup ecosystem. So we see that there are 400 B2B AI startups which have solutions catering to the financial sector, and they have raised funding of over 30 billion, out of which 40 billion was raised in the past 2 years. And an interesting trend over here is we are also seeing a number of startups which are joining the unicorn club. They have vertical specific solutions. So there are 25 such unicorns which cater to BFSI. That was the landscape view. Now we are looking at we filtered out top 5 trends in in BFSI, and then we are looking at what under each of these trends, what are the different attributes. So the first trend that we filtered out was that banks as well as insurers are adopting AI to build a zero operations bank. So this means that they are integrating and automating the front end and the back end processes end to end. So to take a case in point over here, SMBC Group has integrated AI to automate customer onboarding, document processing, as well as KYC automation. The next trend, which we feel is very much important to BFSI because they are at pretty high risks to cyber attack. So we see AI empowering these banks to be a zero trust enterprise where ML algorithms are helping them with tracking user behavior or analyzing user behavior in real time transaction monitoring, and preventing money laundering as well. We see AI being deployed and it reduces the latency as well. The third trend that we looked at is how how this technology is enabling BFSI enterprises to minimize risks associated with assets, loans, and their customers. So they are leveraging ML algorithms to basically have a 360-degree view on their applicants, assess their credit risk, predict future defaults, and manage assets that have a possibility of becoming a non-performing asset. So these two are the areas which are pretty new currently. So here we are seeing AI venturing into insurance sector, where it is smartly personalizing customers' journey and it is automating the insurance workflows end to end. So here we are looking AI being integrated into claims assessment, credit underwriting, damage assessment, and policy renewals. AI is also paving its way into capital markets that enables real-time market rate surveillance. It also helps in managing and automating the client's portfolio in real time. So these were the top trends that we filtered out in the BFSI sector. And here we have an interesting view where we have filtered out around 30 use cases. 30 use cases across the 5 trends or the areas that we talked about. And we have mapped these against 2 angles. So I'll just take a minute to explain what was the process of mapping these use cases. So on the x-axis, we have the opportunity pipeline. By opportunity pipeline, I mean the enterprise adoption. So adopt is the phase. All the use cases lying in the adopt phase are the ones which have witnessed enterprise-wide, industry-wide adoption. The trial are the ones where it is basically more into the POC development and it has witnessed less amount of adoption, I would say. And the explore ones are the ones which are completely inventive use cases, which has witnessed minimal adoption currently. On the curved side of the chart, we have the business impact, and this business impact is being measured for each use case in terms of the productivity improvement, cost reduction, customer experience enhancement, and the number of business processes that it is impacting. So on the basis of this, we have mapped these 30 use cases. And a very interesting trend that comes out is that if you look at the adopt section, right, most of the use cases, it belongs to the core banking operations. Whereas if you look at the trial or the explore stage, so I would say the next business opportunity is going to be in the capital markets and automating workflows in the insurance sector. The another trend that I would look at is that if you look at the transformational, so basically these use cases are the ones with highest business impact. So here we see a lot of use cases catering to cyber security. So basically, enterprises have a view that integrating AI in cybersecurity use cases would be highly beneficial to them, and it is unlocking significant amount of business value for them. So the previous slides gave overall enterprise or the demand side of view. Now we are looking at the supply side of view. When we look at the startup ecosystem, there are over 10,000 AI startups globally, which are driving the innovation charter. However, for the purpose of our study, we have analyzed around 3,500 B2B startups and with a total funding of more than 5 million. Now, these startups have garnered a total funding of 165 billion. We have analyzed these startups through various lenses. We have the technology bifurcation over here. And then we looked at the offerings that they're providing. And we found that most of the startups are horizontal, where customer service, marketing and sales, and IT and analytics are the top 3 funded areas. Talking about the most funded vertical, healthcare came to be the winner with over 700 healthcare specific startups receiving a 32 billion plus funding. And over 40% of this has been raised in the last 2 years, with the top 2 use case category being drug development and smart diagnostics. Now, the startup would be incomplete without talking about the unicorns. So we have a total of 80 B2B unicorns currently globally, but 2021 saw 50 new startups joining the unicorn club in 2021, which has been the record high in the past 5 years. So to take a case in point here, recently, a Japanese startup called as Open, so it's a payments platform provider. It joined the unicorn club by raising over 120 million Series C funding. And interestingly, 20 of the total startups cater to have a vertical specific AI solutions. Another fascinating aspect is that the time to reach unicorn status have been decreased from 2 to 3 years to now it has become 1 to 2 years. So this shows that the solutions are being largely accepted by the market. So moving on, talking about AI innovation, the stakeholder that has been running at the forefront has to be the digital giants. So with technologies like AI, where the breakthroughs are happening every single moment, we also looked at how these digital giants are evolving algorithms. So we have looked at the sub technologies like the vision, speech, NLP, and the ML, and how have these algorithms evolved over the years, and we have bifurcated them into stages. So the evolution has been from basically an algorithm which was completely based on a rule-based reasoning, and now it is being now they are being made more autonomous and inclusive. So just to give an example, tech giants are making vision models for facial recognition more accurate by making them more bias-free and inclusive. And we see a similar trend happening for the other sub-technology. Apart from the startups and the digital giants, we found that the governments have also been playing a very key role in influencing the growth of AI. So currently there are 60 nations who have 1,000 policies and frameworks on governance, regulations, infrastructure, building talent, and financial supports. Now here, the progress across the countries have been a little different. So for example, countries like say Kenya or India who have just started on the AI strategy, they are they are formulating a 4 to 5 years AI strategy plans, and they are currently building on their infrastructure facilities. They're building AI talent. Whereas if you look at the more advanced countries like the USA or the UK, or now the upcoming China, they are bringing in data privacy regulations to govern AI implementation. So they have a lot of policies surrounding responsible AI as well. So after a comprehensive analysis of the AI market through all the lenses, we distilled out 6 trends that we believe would shape the future of AI. So first one is the changing funding intensity. So we believe that Asia region or the APAC would be the next AI innovation center, and we believe this because it has already surpassed North America in terms of the yearly growth in AI funding. And we also see that the number of new startups coming in APAC would surpass North America. Second is the increasing number of unicorns. So we'll see around 100 plus startups joining the unicorn club in the next 2 years. The next trend that we look at is the AI talent hub, and we believe that that is going to be China in the coming 2 years, as we have seen a 2x spike in demand for AI talent over the last 1 year. The next trend that we look at is the demand for pre-built use case specific applications is going to increase because enterprises are seeking for ways to have a faster time to market for their AI solutions. The next trend that we'll look at is how AI is basically reimagining customer experiences, and it is acting like an enabler to unify and reimagine this experience. So, for example, from our global survey, we noticed that over 20% of the enterprises are already inculcating AI in new age technologies like the metaverse to provide a more cohesive experience. And lastly, we believe that AI will take a center stage when it comes to ensuring sustainability for your own operations, for your suppliers, as well as your partnerships, and it will, as well as for your partners, and it will enable use cases like your carbon footprint tracking, optimizing your energy operations as well. Now we are almost at the end of the presentation, so I'll just like to touch upon that. Like, even though for the industries or for the enterprises, the journey from being laggards to innovators isn't a straight one, but it is certainly the one that can have a potential to create significant long-term impact. And we at Zinnov can support you and your customers to for a to be an AI first with an AI first journey. So for starters, we can conduct a personalized workshop. So this report was a shorter version of the main report. As we have a detailed analysis on BFSI, we have a detailed analysis on each of the industries. So we can do that for you. Second is we can identify potential partners in startups, ISVs, GSI, can do a complete benchmarking with other leaders in the market in terms of AI strategy. And we can also provide you with detailed industry reports covering current market landscape, progressive trends, business opportunity for your enterprise by identifying potential use cases. Now with this, I wind up my presentation. Please post your questions in the chat window and I'll be happy to answer them. So thank you very much.